Well, ladies and gentlemen, we do have a huge polling update to get to here when it comes to the 2024 election. Atlas Intel, rated as a top pollster. They were the most accurate pollster of 2020, according to 538. And we've got the numbers to back it up. They've come out and they've got Donald Trump up by 2.9, basically 3% in terms of just the general popular vote. You can see I had a reaction to this huge, most accurate pollster in 2020. And then someone asks, why do I say that? And it's because of this. You can see 538 average pollster error in the 2020 presidential race. And this does make sense with Quinnipiac all the way at the bottom. You've also got CNN, LA Times, Washington Post, Monmouth. All of those were terrible. But you can see Atlas Intel ranked as the number one poll in 2020, their final numbers. And this is based off of the popular vote. They barely got it wrong. They were off by like 0.2%. And obviously, this is just a poll in September. It's not an end-all, be-all, but we were seeing some liberal pollsters. It was like 3 or 4 straight, very liberal, far-left polls come out that had Harris up by 4 to 5 in terms of the general election. They're trying to stretch her lead out, but this is a very accurate pollster that has Trump. This is a death blow if this is true, up by at this point, almost 3 points. And you can see this is their first release since July, and it's Trump basically improving by almost a point, 0.8. That brings him up to 51%, basically to Harris's 48%. You can just see the average there. This was the day after the debate, so the 11th and the 12th. So this is post-debate, and it is Trump gaining after already leading according to this Atlas Intel, which again, if you want to talk about the top polls, you can say, oh, it's an F, it's a D. They get out all these polling grades. How do they give pollsters that were horribly wrong in 2020 A grades? Just because they invest a lot of money into polling, it doesn't matter. If you do a horrible job, you still shouldn't get a good grade. That makes no sense. And they also did do a poll on who won the debate. They said it was a narrow Harris victory, which really doesn't surprise me much. Around 47%, Trump at 39%. Neither at 13. The debate really didn't move the needle one way or another, even with Harris winning that. According to that same pollster in their recent poll, they have Trump since July gaining by almost a point, and this is according to the error, according to, honestly, 538, very liberal, we know them. Atlas poll, Atlas Intel, they were the most accurate pollster in 2020 when you adjust it, and they were only off by 0.2 in terms of the popular vote, points overall. So this is a huge, huge situation. You would not expect if Kamala Harris was really surging right after the debate, the polls that said she was up by 4 or 5, you would not expect this. You would expect at least, even if you want to say this poll has slight Republican bias, if you want to try and argue something like that, it is kind of funny how it's like all these polls that have Republicans at least either neck and neck or leading, they're all deemed as, oh, they're ridiculously biased. And then you look at election night, they all end up performing the best out of any poll outside of 2022. And that was a midterm, of course, so that's different. But you look at 2016 and 2020, they say, oh, they're Republican polls, that, like Rasmussen, they try and discredit them. And then they end up, and Rasmussen's actually underrated Trump 2 times. So it's not like, look, I would understand it if there were Republican pollsters that were vastly overrating Trump in 2016 and 2020. And for me to sit here and spout off their polls and to say, oh, Trump's up by 5 or 6, that would be, obviously dumb. And that's what liberals are doing with some of the liberal polls that just were horribly wrong in 2020 and 2016. They're like, oh my God, Harris is up by 4 or 5, and the pollster has gotten like the last 2 elections wrong times 20, and they're graded out as one of the worst pollsters. This is the best pollster in 2020 saying Trump in a popular vote situation. Even if Trump underperforms this by 3 points, that would be a tie and Trump would win. Obviously, if Trump basically ties in terms of the popular vote, it's not going to be an exact tie, but let's just say it's within like 0.1% or 0.2%. It's basically a guaranteed Trump victory based on the Electoral College. If Trump loses, if Trump underperforms this poll by 4 points, I think Trump's guaranteed to win, because then he'd only be losing the popular vote by 1 point. Do we really think he's going to lose the Electoral College while losing the popular vote by 1 point? It's basically impossible. He could underperform this poll possibly by even more. And now the idea that we're getting down, not necessarily to crunch time, but it's getting close. Kamala Harris demanding more debates. You can tell, and it's been reported, that her internal numbers are not good. They said they're struggling in Pennsylvania. They're struggling in Arizona. They're looking at North Carolina and Georgia over Arizona, but specifically North Carolina, they want that to be in play. Although there are some absentee ballot numbers that have come out that are really good and really nice for Republicans with the mail-in voting. The mail-in voting apparently is significantly down, and we knew it would be because there's not going to be a high demand with the pandemic and everything like that. But these numbers that are coming out, especially a poll like this, most accurate pollster in 2020 was like 0.2 points off of the overall popular vote, with Biden winning it by like 4.2, and they had him winning by 4.4 or something like that. So this is big news, and this is obviously very good for Trump, and it goes to show you that the debate, not that a ton of people were arguing it. Some people said, Harris crushed Trump. It didn't happen. And the numbers back it up. There's really nothing crazy in terms of the polls, even with the liberal polls that said she was up by 4 or 5 in terms of the popular vote. This is not surprising that we're seeing polls like this now, because there was really no, crazy moment in the debate that said, oh, she won. It was just based off of vibes. So these are really good numbers for Trump. And I did just want to talk about this. And then I am just going to be taking a look at some of these updated Real Clear Politics polls. I'm not sure if Real Clear Politics will input I think they do. They input the Atlas Intel polls, I believe. I think I've seen them here before. So that's going to help Trump, obviously, a +3 in terms of national, just popular vote average against Harris in the aggregate. But you do have a few polls. The Republican pollster, Trump +2 in North Carolina, Wisconsin, Harris +2. Minnesota, a lot of people were getting excited about this for sure. Harris only with a +5. North Carolina, Trump with a +3. Very important state for Trump. I think Trump will be able to hold North Carolina. There has been some very positive polling out of Michigan. Looked like a state that Harris was leading by 2 or 3 points. It's become basically a tie there. New Hampshire with a +8 for Harris. It doesn't necessarily surprise me. Arkansas randomly getting a poll with a Trump +15 there. North Carolina, same pollster. You bring everyone else in. Weston Stein, Trump is still sitting +3. Michigan with, they include Kennedy. Is Kennedy still on the ballot in Michigan? I think they tried to remove him and then they put him back on. But that could be an issue for Trump, although it's one of those things. How many votes is he really going to get? He's telling people to vote for Trump and to not vote for himself. Biden's approval rating, it ticked up when he decided to drop out, but it's still heavily negative. But other than that, these are some of the more liberal. You've got the 2+5 polls, national polls from more liberal pollsters. Other than that, the 11th, that's really not Marquette. Yeah, Marquette's been very liberal as well with the polls that they've done. Pretty much every Marquette poll, they're doing exactly what Quinnipiac did in 2020, and it's sad because you can see it. You can tell that they're not polling. Their philosophy is off. They're going to be 5 or 6 points off, then they're going to say what happened. Although it does seem like the polls are getting slightly better to where we're not seeing the crazy outliers like we did in 2020. And at this point, it's kind of absurd. You would think they would correct themselves and learn how to poll properly, or at least better, considering how bad the polls have been in many of these swing states in both 2020 and 2016. And now they are a lot more close, I will say that. But I do expect Trump to, again, outperform them. And you take a look at, an Atlas Intel poll, if they're even close to being right, if Trump maybe wins the popular vote, let's say he underperforms that by 2 points, he wins the popular vote by 1, he's getting 312 electoral votes, pretty much guaranteed at least 306. It's an easy victory. So if that actually happens, even anything close to that, you don't need to win the popular by 3. Just, you could lose it by 1 or 2 and still win, and underperform that poll by 5 and still win. That's a crazy, crazy poll. You could say, well, it was a fluke in 2020 that they got it that close, but it is interesting that was the most accurate pollsters, or at least one of the most accurate pollsters, just in terms of the general popular vote. I don't know about swing states, but the popular vote, and they've got Trump up by 3 right now, this late in the game after the debate, and there's probably not going to be another debate. And now it's starting to make sense why Kamala Harris and her campaign, they're out there, they're doing all these rallies, they're demanding another debate. She's calling him out on X. She's saying, we must do another debate. The people need it. It seems like they're desperate and their internal numbers are not good. And it's not surprising considering this year the polls look a lot worse for liberals than they did in 2020 and 2016. And in 2020, they barely won. And in 2016, they lost with Trump getting over 300 electoral votes. But either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.